to a standpoint where like when more success, if you will, or more financial success came about, you were ready for it and you weren't going to throw it all away, and it wasn't going to fall as quickly as it rose, if you will. I want to start to get into a little bit of technical personal finance and whatnot. I love y'all's concept of building your base, of building basically your first 100K, if you will, invested into the markets. Talk us to us just kind of like briefly overview of like what building your base means. I know I kind of just said it, but what building your base means, why it's important, and how to do it, and kind of what it looks like from an investment portfolio perspective.
Yeah, totally. So at the Rich Habits podcast, we are firm believers that every single person, if you are on the wealth building journey that is retirement, right, you need to build your base. And what that is defined as for us is having at least $100,000 saved and invested in, this could be across all of your different retirement accounts, all your brokerage accounts. It doesn't have to be in one account, right? So your 401k here, maybe your traditional IRA there, maybe your bridge account over here, but having that $100,000 saved and invested in the index funds and ETFs that have done well for the last several decades. So I'm talking about the S&P 500, ETF for that is VOO. Talking about the NASDAQ 100, ETF for that is QQQ. Talking about the Dow Jones Industrial Average, really not the Russell 2000, but like there are some incredible, super easy ETFs that you can put your money in over a long period of time and it will continue to grow. The rule of 72. This is a math equation that I'm sure Nick also learned in college, which essentially means that if you take the number 72 and you divide it by your annualized expected return, it tells you how long it's going to take to double your investment. And so you take the number 72, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 tend to go up by about 10% per year. So 72 divided by 10 is 7, rough, which tells us any dollars that we invest today will double in value every 7 years. So that $100,000 doubles into $200,000 7 years from now. And then 7 years again, it'll double to 400,000 and then 800,000, then 1.6 million, right? So on and so forth. And why we think it's so important. You know, you've got two camps. You've got the Dave Ramsey camp, and no shade to Dave Ramsey. I learned about all this because he helped me understand personal finance and investing. But his camp is get out of debt, get out of debt, get out of debt. Our camp is get invested, get invested, get invested. And here's why. Let's say you have a net worth of $100,000, and that net worth is brought down by $82,000 of student loans, maybe $50,000 of car debt, but like it's brought down because you have debt. Now, let's say you have the exact same $100,000 net worth over here as well. When on the camp of paying off the debt, yes, if it is high interest debt like credit cards or maybe some sort of HELOC or something that is like just bad news bears, get rid of it. We don't want any of that stuff. You're paying way too much in interest. Totally agree. But when it comes down to this idea of like pay off debt, pay off debt, pay off debt, debt is simple interest, and the best it's going to do is go to zero. So I love using my wife here as an example. We are married, haven't combined finances yet. Long story about that. Nick knows it, but anyone. Long story short here, she has student loans of about $30,000. And she goes, "Hey, Austin, I just graduated. I got my MBA. I've got $30,000 of student loans. Should I just like take all my extra money and go pay it off?" And I'm like, "Okay, you very well could, pay off this $30,000 of student loan debt, or hear me out. You could invest into your Roth IRA, put some money in your savings account, and then after you have at least $30,000 saved and invested over here, then with net new money, you go pay that off." And now it comes back to the $100,000 and why it's so important is because let's say she took that same 30,000 over the last 3 years or 4 years and paid off the debt. Congratulations, you now don't have debt. But that same 30, 40,000 put over here and invested will double in 7 years. You're not going to come up with an extra 30, 40,000 over here because you paid off the debt. Then that's going to double 7 years from then. So I guess what I'm saying is whenever you have that first base of $100,000 saved and invested, it's always going to be working for you and building throughout your life. And don't get me wrong. I know everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, $100,000, that's a lot of money, dude. I don't know if I can come up with that." On average, it takes 8 years for the average person to go from zero to $100,000 invested. So like, do not feel like you got to do this in 12 months or 18, whatever. It's going to take you a long time. But that first 100,000 is going to be that first 8 years. But then you know how long it's going to take to get the next 100? 6 years. And the
Yeah.
next 100? 4 years. And then you'll be hitting $100,000 every year because your portfolio is so big and it's working for you automatically. So just having that mentality of like being able to understand just how important compound interest is and how it can continue to grow throughout your life versus simple interest of paying down debt, it's just the biggest game changer, I think, for people.
Totally. And like, it's so important to understand and internalize and execute upon, the 100,000. And when you're talking about doubling, that's not even putting anything more in. And when you start to put more in on a monthly basis, annual basis, like the rate at which the compound interest increases is exponential. And so it's super exciting. And then the other thing to think about is that this is why it's so important for parents to teach their kids personal finance. Because if you think about it, 8 years to go from 0 to 100K, that's graduate from college, turn 30 years old, you've got 100K in the bank. And like, you're already doing really, 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 really good. And so it's really important. Like if you're listening to this, send this to somebody who has a kid who's maybe in high school or in college, like open up Roth IRA, open up a savings account, like get some of these investment vehicles rolling because it's going to make a huge difference and really set them up for success. And I think it's really important. I think a lot of people live life backwards. I think a lot of people in their 20s are thinking, oh man, I'm only going to be young for so long. I need to live my life. And like, there's obviously some of that, and we might get into that in a second, but it's like, yeah, but you really got to dig your feet in and get that 100K as soon as possible because it's going to have unbelievable growth because of simply longevity by getting it done so early on.
And I'd love
Actually, let's,
to give another example to that, actually.
yeah.
It's actually funny. This podcast episode was filmed, but it's not yet live yet. We filmed it in advance. So, to your point, and I love this because it goes right back to what you're saying. Every dollar invested in your 20s turns into $70 in retirement.
Mm.
Whoa. So that $3 beer really just got a lot more expensive. That extra, going out on that Saturday night, like, don't get me wrong, have some fun, do your thing. But think about that. Next time you're over here telling yourself, oh, yeah, an extra $100 a month, my friends, whatever. That is an extra $7,000 that you could have in retirement. So every dollar in your 20s is $70 in retirement. Every dollar in your 30s is only $26 in retirement. And every dollar you invest in your 40s is only $10 in retirement. So that really illustrates the power of compound interest and getting invested early and staying invested for the longevity of that, 30, 40, 50